Championship weekend is set. It's the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we are here at Game On Wisconsin to break it all down. Boys, let's hit it. And what's up? What's happening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to the show. This is Game On Wisconsin. I am your host this evening. I am Jacob Westendorf. And online there on the bottom, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Westendorf. Live in the Game On Wisconsin studios, it's the Green Bay Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the NFC title, an old school NFC Central showdown for those of you that are old enough to remember those days for the NFC crown. And you may have heard by now, it's Aaron Rodgers against Tom Brady, and the first time they are facing off in postseason play. I am joined by the Book of Eli. Eli Berkovits is with me from his little studio here, host of Open Book, a writer at Packer Report, and several other places. But Eli, I will not steal your thunder, and frankly, you do so much I can't remember it all. So feel free, tell the people where we can find everything.
Well, first off, thanks for that intro, and happy to be a part of this show here tonight. But yeah, like Jacob said, I have Open Book with Zach Jacobson, who I'm sure everyone watching knows very well, every Wednesday. And I do some writing for Packer Report, some writing for Fantasy Pros. So mostly Packers and fantasy football. But yeah, you can find my work there at PackerReport.com. fantasypros.com, and then on Twitter at bookofeli_NFL.
And he has an excellent hype video that we just dropped over at Game On WI. So feel free to check that out at your earliest convenience. Josh Reeder in the chat. I agree. Bring on Tampa. Let's go. It's the NFC title. So let's get some first thoughts here going through about everything. Let's start with today's game, and we'll obviously go through yesterday's game as well. And we do anticipate having Jacob Morley here shortly of Packer Report as well, but his internet is giving him some fits, as they might say, kind of similar to the Packers defense to Jared Goff, if you will, over the weekend. But today's game was Tampa Bay against New Orleans. It was at the Superdome. It was the last game, likely, not official, hasn't been said by Drew Brees, but Jay Glazer reported before the game that it was very likely to be the last game of Drew Brees' career at the Superdome, with it going to Lambeau Field next week. Now his career is likely over. He throws 3 interceptions and frankly doesn't look very good throughout the course of the game. So the Bucs are able to move on. The entire game, Eli, really changes. The Saints are driving in the middle of the third quarter. Brees hits Jared Cook on a crossing route, and Antoine Winfield Jr. forces a fumble. At the time, the Saints' second of the day, and the Bucs are able to march down the field and tie the game with everything going on. So give me some thoughts on how the game changes right there and just how everything kind of went from start to finish today with Tampa Bay and New Orleans.
Well, I think you saw New Orleans, come out with a good game plan. I think that should have leaned on Kamara more. That did surprise me that he wasn't getting as many touches, especially with Latavius Murray not playing. But like you said, they were in control of the game. They were up 20-13 in the second half, driving down the field. And on 3rd and short, Jared Cook runs a nice route, gets separation, catches the ball, and then he goes and does the one thing as a ball carrier he can't do, which is, hold the ball out, and the defender, give him credit, made a nice play and punched the ball out. I mean, I called it. I was watching, and as he's running, before I even saw Winfield go for that punch, I yelled ball because it looked just open to be punched out, and the fumble really didn't shock me. And then once that happened and they went down and scored, I kind of just had this feeling that, okay, the Bucs are going to pull out and win this game. And I looked at the Bucs stats and their touchdown drives. Their 3 touchdown drives, 1 play for 3 yards, 5 plays for 40 yards, 4 plays for 20 yards. All of their points coming off turnovers. We all know the Packers had the fewest amount of turnovers in the league. So this game, you remove those turnovers, I think the Saints right now are walking out with a victory. And plain and simple, next week, as long as we continue to do what we do and hold the football, I think we walk out with a win. I mean, the Bucs, they didn't blow out the Washington football team. They, didn't look all that impressive. Forget it, blowing them out. And then today, they were in real danger of losing if Jared Cook didn't fumble that football.
So there you have that. And we have our other guest tonight. Jacob Morley is here from Packer Report. We've got your internet issues figured out. You can follow him on Twitter at Jacob Morley. Jake, welcome to the show. Thanks for stopping by. Packers and Bucs. How we feeling?
Dude, feeling good, man. Feeling really good. Excited to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to come to Lambeau Field next week. And I know if there's one game that Aaron Rodgers and company would love to go back and look on the schedule and absolutely just erase really that one blemish on their entire schedule, it's the Buccaneers. And Rodgers said after the Buccaneers game in week 6, or was it week 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is the two AFC, NFC matchup games are both week 6 rematches. The Bills played the Chiefs in week 6. But in any case, I know Rodgers said after the game that it was more of an anomaly than the norm, and they definitely proved that. They lost two more games the rest of the year, and here they are in the NFC Championship game. So I think the Packers are going to know what doesn't work, for when they play the Bucs. A lot of us remember the Bucs game, and they wanted to, it was kind of a head scratching game plan. They went up 10-0. And it seemed clunky. It wasn't like a clean 10-0, and it did seem a little bit off. And they kept trying to get the edges on this really fast Tampa Bay team. And I think last week you saw against the Rams, they just shoved the ball down their throat. And I think that's what they need to do again next week against Tampa. Would have loved to see Drew Brees have to come to Lambeau Field and play in the 20-degree weather and the snow. But beating Tom Brady is going to be a lot of fun too. And we're here for that. Tom Brady is he's no stranger to playing in the snow. That's not going to be much of an issue for him, but he's got 52 other guys on the roster that are playing with him. And Tom Brady isn't really the guy that carries the team anymore. So he is more reliant on some of these guys. So it's going to be more of a team effort to try to beat these Packers. And right now, after watching that team last week, I don't know if there's a team that can beat the Packers if they play the way that they can play.
And then what I asked Eli was just some of your general thoughts on this game as it progressed here between Tampa Bay and New Orleans. And I pointed out, the play of the game, the one that everybody's going to circle, or the one everybody should be circling, is the Jared Cook fumble, because New Orleans has a chance to stretch their lead to double digits, and he coughs the ball up. And from there, the final was 30-20. The Bucs outscore New Orleans 17-0 after that fumble. Completely changes the game, because you're looking at probably 23-13 at minimum, maybe 27-13. And this is an entirely different game from that standpoint moving forward. But instead, Tampa Bay gets that turnover. They stuff it in the end zone right after that. And then they just kind of roll from there. What were your thoughts on that game as a whole, and as it changed right in that spot?
Yeah, from this game, what it looked like was two elderly quarterbacks who looked like they really struggled to throw the ball outside the numbers. And that's pretty much what it was. Brees was just more escalated in his decrepitness. I don't know if that's nice to say. I mean, I feel bad. I love Drew Brees. I honestly, I like Tom Brady too. Like, I don't really hate either of those guys. I respect and appreciate what they're able to do, but they both look not like the guy that they have been. And I think you're right when you point out this was a close game. I really thought New Orleans was gonna wrap this thing up, and then Drew Brees just he looked like he needs to be done. That's what it looks like. And I think if you're on Twitter, you see it. Everyone's pointing out the fact that he can't throw the ball down the field. The one, I think they said it on the broadcast, the one trick play they ran to take a shot down the field, they had to take him off the field. And so you just can't play 4 quarters of football like that against a talented, athletic defense like the Bucs. You have to be diverse. You have to give them different looks. You have to get them moving in different directions. And the clamps just came down on Drew Brees, and it was obvious to everyone that was watching that the Bucs knew what they were going to want to do, and they weren't fooling anybody by the end of the game. And we kind of saw that as a reflection in the score.
Yeah, and the Saints offense, if you guys really look at it, with Drew Brees under center, 13 points, because 7 of their 20 points came from Jameis Winston, which was hilarious. The troll job by Sean Payton really never stops. But otherwise, they run a trick play, and teams that run trick plays not all the time, but a lot of the time, are telling you how they feel about their quarterback. And that's the reason they did that, because they knew their quarterback can't push the ball down the field. And you saw once he had to do it, he couldn't do it. 2 of the interceptions he threw later in the game, one up the sideline to Jared Cook. That was a ball that kind of hung up there, and then one up the seam. He just doesn't have any juice on those throws anymore. Mm-hmm. And Breeze is a guy who was never a big arm strength guy, but whatever little arm strength he had left is gone. And Breeze needs to be done. And I think this you can't really call it a dynasty because they only won one championship, but the playoff, consistency year to year to year, you look at the Saints cap situation, you look at their quarterback situation, I think they're done. And it's going to be a while before we see them back in a spot like this for a long time. This really felt like a Super Bowl or bust kind of year. And it really is a crying shame that Sean Payton was allowed to just continue to waste the career of Drew Brees and have that happen. So
I love that joke. I love saying that joke whenever an elite quarterback doesn't win a Super Bowl.
Correct. It's a little tongue in cheek for those of you that can't catch my sarcasm on that. I just think that's funny that specific line of thinking is reserved for one particular head coaching quarterback combination, but we don't need to get into that. Let's get into Saturday's game a little bit before we start talking about Sunday and next Sunday, I should say, when the Packers will take on the Bucs guys. The Packers beat the Rams 32-18. I was thoroughly impressed with this offense. And, you get all these talk about this matchups. And yes, the degree of difficulty, there is a caveat. It does go down a little bit when you hear that Aaron Donald basically doesn't play from the middle of the second quarter all the way on. And he was kind of compromised anyways. He wasn't as impactful. I understand that. That being said, the conversation going into this game was about Jalen Ramsey putting the clamps on Davante Adams and how are these other dudes going to step up? Well, guys, they did. And you look at, I know everybody pointed to the drop of Allen Lazard and how that kind of could have changed the entire game. Well, to the Packers' credit, it didn't. And if you look at their box line, Allen Lazard, team's leading receiver, 4 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Robert Tonyan, 4 catches, 60 yards. MVS, 4 catches, 33 yards, and really a huge first down to keep that drive going. 2 plays afterwards, they hit the dagger to Lazard up the seam. I will also say something we're not going to do is talk about week 6 because these teams are entirely different. The last time these two teams played, Davante Adams it was his first game back off of an injury, and Allen Lazard did not play. And the Packers, I think that we've pretty much gathered based on how the rest of the season went, it's the Murphy's Law game. Anything that could have gone wrong did. So that's where we're going to leave that. That's where that's going to go. That being said, what I was saying was the way this offense played, they did whatever they wanted. And I know they punted on consecutive series in the third quarter, but even then it just felt like I was never worried. Even as they punted the ball back to the Rams up by a touchdown, I was like, even if they score, the Packers are going to figure this thing out. And they've done that all year long. They've played so well in situational football. They play well in the fourth quarter. That's what you need to do in playoff games. And Green Bay, to their credit, did that. Eli, let's start with you. What was your thought on this offense going into the game? And did they even exceed your expectation? There may not be a bigger Aaron Rodgers fan in the world than you, but did you expect this? What were your thoughts on this game as it progressed?
Well, going into the game, usually, just any week I have plenty of nerves, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't have nerves going into this one, but in my head and in my heart, I really didn't have any real fear of the Rams. I knew their offense was limited. I knew that unless Cam Akers had the game of his life, there really wasn't going to be a chance. As long as you turn Jared Goff into a drop back passer, he's going to crumble. The weather didn't end up playing as much of a factor, wasn't as cold as maybe we wanted it to be, but it didn't really scare me going into the game. But I will say that none of my score predictions, I don't think I took the Packers to have 30. I think I had around 27, 28. So getting to 32, and all three of us know that could have been more. It could have, that could have been, we missed an extra point. We went for 2, which was a questionable call. Maybe we could get into. We had the Allen Lazard drop. So it could have been 40 points on the number 1 defense in the NFL. Going into that game, their previous season high in yardage given up was 390. The Packers put up 484, and they made it look pretty easy, both on the ground and through the air. I mean, we could talk about Aaron Rodgers all day, and I would love to, but I think we need to start talking about this run game and just how impressive they were. 188 rush yards. Aaron Jones, obviously the big 60-yarder to start the second half, but underrated for me. I think Jamal Williams played maybe his best game of the year, one of his best games of the year. It seemed like every time he touched the ball, he was getting 4 to 6 yards and dragging people along with him. I loved seeing that, and I love seeing them just going up the middle. You have an all-pro center. You have Elton Jenkins, who's 2 years into his career, and people are talking about him already, heading to like the Hall of Fame. The guy's incredible. And I just think that, like you said, in week 6, they were going to the edges way too much. The Bucs defense is too fast to attack them at the edges. They lost Vita Vea. They're a bit more vulnerable in the middle. I think you got to pound, just like they did last week, all 3 backs up the middle, base it off the run, and then you get the play action. And like we saw in the dagger to Alan Lazard, it was after running play, eventually that defense is going to get sucked in. The safeties are going to come down, and you're going to get a deep shot. And it was Lazard. So between Devontae and MVS, he's probably the slowest of the 3, and he was the one to do it because that's just how effective their running game was. So I think it starts and finishes with getting the run game going, and then you build the play action pass game off that, and then everything else.
Yeah, I was the Lazard play was going away from me, so I was facing the Rams defense as that play happened, and it was a beautiful thing to see. Like the smirk on Aaron Rodgers' face is kind of funny to see now, because I'm always a firm believer that if I saw something, that the quarterback on the field definitely saw it too. And as soon as I saw him turn around, I saw the safety fly up the field, and I was like, holy crap, they've got a touchdown if this is a passing play.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw him turn his back, I was just looking to see who it was. And with the ball in the air, I'm like, just catch it. Just catch it. Because if he catches it, he's going to score. And to his credit, he did. And Jake, I want to get to that because Eli mentioned the running game. And if you look at the way the Packers were able to move the ball on the ground, 32 carries for 191 yards. If you remove Aaron Rodgers' 4 runs for -3 yards, they have 1 touchdown. Then I'll take that one away. I'm happy to do that. Unfortunately, those 3 kneel downs he had for negative yards. So we'll forgive him for that. I guess he's not as good at the kneel down as Tim Boyle, if that's the case. But Aaron Jones, 14 carries, 99 yards, 7 yards a carry. He pops a 60-yarder to open the third quarter. Jamal Williams, 12 carries, 65 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. And he was running angry on Saturday afternoon. It was a very nice thing to see. A.J. Dillon, 6 carries, 27 yards, 4.5 carry. Did make me soil myself when he fumbled a little bit, but we recovered it all as well. Got hurt. Which
has there been an update on that?
Just that it was a quad injury. He was not moving well after he got hit. So the hope is that he'll be able to contribute something in the NFC Championship game. And I remember after they played Tampa the first time, you kind of touched on it a little bit, Eli, was talking about the way to attack this Bucs rushing defense is you got to run downhill at them. The outside zone stretch stuff and everything like that. That's not going to work because Devin White and Levante David are too fast. So it's got to be power downhill. It's not a coincidence that their best running plays in that game were Jamal Williams downhill, A.J. Dillon in garbage time, but downhill running. That being said, Jake, this Rams team has done well all season against the run, and the Packers were able to just ram it down their throat. And I know in this day and age, passing is more efficient. It's a pass-happy league. It's a quarterback league. I understand all that stuff. But there was just something beautiful about the ability for the Packers to turn around, hand the ball off, and know, okay, that's 5 or 6 yards, maybe more, depending on how far Jones or Williams want to run on it.
Okay, real quick, just on that point, didn't you find – I mean, I was very confused with the decision to go for 2, but fine, you want to go for 2. But every play on that drive, when you needed the short yardage on third down, they ran it and it worked. And then you go with the 5 wide, and that really confused me. I thought they easily could have just pounded it in again for the 2-pointer.
A little. LaFleur seems to have 1 or 2 plays like that a game, and he always says you have 1 or 2 calls that you wish you could have had back. I imagine that may very well end up being one of them. That's kind of my thought on that. So, Jake, you feel free to touch on that. And then just in general, the Packers, their interior line, I thought they were dominant. Elton Jenkins, Corey Linsley, and Lucas Patrick, who, if we're all being honest, we all had him circled on our people were most worried about going into the game because he was facing off against the Terminator and Aaron Donald. And I thought he did very well as well.
Yeah, I mean, leading up to this game, this was one that I don't want to sound arrogant, but I really wasn't too worried about this game. Healthy Aaron Donald, hurt Aaron Donald, it didn't matter. I think you can go back and check the receipts. And my message all week was everything the Rams do well, the Packers have an elite answer for. And that showed up on Saturday. And the elite answer for Aaron Donald was Elton Jenkins and Corey Linsley, and then Lucas Patrick getting involved as well. And the reason that
Adam Stenavich, that was pointed out by Justin Reed.
Adam
Stenavich deserves
he's done an incredible job.
Yeah, he's the real deal. And we've talked about him on here before as being a guy that people were just wringing their hands over when they got rid of James Campen and brought in Stenavich. So hats off to LaFleur, but those guys did a great job. And the reason the Rams are good at stopping the run is, Aaron Donald is that dude. He is, I mean, you can't discredit him enough, and you can't make a big enough deal out of him being injured. But without him, they're not a bad run defense, right? They still can get the job done. Michael Brockers is still a really good player. Leonard Floyd has had a really good season. That secondary has been really good all year. But you look at the secondary too. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are the answer for any secondary. Elton Jenkins, I think I tweeted that out, that put some respect on that guy's name. He absolutely ate Aaron Donald's lunch. Healthy or not, I have a ton of respect for Aaron Donald for him being out there. Like, that's legend stuff. His teammates certainly appreciate that, but Elton Jenkins ate his lunch the whole game. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he would have done that with a healthy Aaron Donald, but I think Elton Jenkins, Corey Linsley, and Lucas Patrick, if they couldn't slow down Aaron Donald, nobody can in the NFL, because that, for my money, is the best interior offensive line in the NFL. Lucas Patrick gets a lot of flack because he's the worst offensive line on a really, really good one. He's still, when you look at his numbers across the board, his PFF grade, some of his advanced metrics from like Pro Football Focus and Football Outsiders, he's still a top 15, 20 guard in the NFL. And when you have 4 other guys playing with him that play at a really high level, that's really good. You know, if that's where you're going to try to attack is Lucas Patrick, good luck, because he's a good player. So that was something that I wasn't too concerned about. The other thing leading up to this game that I mentioned a little bit on the radio Saturday morning was, if you want a single coverage, if you want to put one guy on Devontae Adams, and the Rams credit, they really didn't. Ramsey really didn't shadow him the whole game, just kind of in big situations. But if you want to do that, so one thing, Devontae's not used to that. Most teams are going to bracket him. Most teams are going to give him double coverage, help over the top, help underneath. It doesn't matter. He's rarely ever seeing single coverage. So if you think you have a guy that can stop him, you damn well better be right. Because if you don't, he's going to eat. And honestly, Jalen Ramsey did a fine job against Devontae Adams. But Devontae Adams he's not like other receivers that he's seen this year. Devontae Adams told Jalen Ramsey that before the game. And he was right. I'm not the guy you've played. I'm not DK Metcalf. I'm not Amari Cooper, Nuke Hopkins, all those guys, great receivers, but Devontae wins differently than those guys. DK, Cooper, those guys, even Nuke to an extent, they win with physicality and athleticism, some combination of those two things. Devontae has that stuff. That's not how he wins. You cannot get your hands on him at the line of scrimmage. You look at when he comes flat at the top of his route and has a two-way release, there's no one in the NFL that can guard him. He got Jalen Ramsey twice on it. It looked like he could have run a slant on Jalen Ramsey all day if he wanted to. It was there all day if he wanted it. And so my thing is like, just enjoy it. Like, there's no one in the NFL that's going to stop this offense the rest of the way. And knock on wood, because the Bucs definitely did in week 6. But I don't think we're going to get that same type of performance, because I just don't think defenses are not built to stop elite offenses in the NFL anymore. The Rams were the number 1 ranked defense in the National Football League. They weren't like a historically good defense. They were just the best 2020 defense, and the Packers boat raced them. It wasn't even close. They probably left 2 or 3 touchdowns all on the field as
they
well.
scored on their first 5 possessions of the game. They only punted twice, and then the final drive to end the game. So, I mean, they scored on all but 2 drives.
And then they kneeled 3 times inside the 10. So
and you were never worried. You were never that worried, right? Like when it got in between 7 points, I was messaging some people. I was like, but that's just our past traumas speaking. That's really all it was. I'm thinking of 2014 against the Seahawks. That's what's in my mind is like, oh gosh, here we go. Like this is a game they have no business losing. Somehow the Rams are still within a score, but ultimately they weren't going to stop this offense. They just weren't. And I think Rodgers knew it. I think that offense knew it. The confidence that they're playing with right now is an all-time high. And you look at the quotes and the way and the things Rodgers saying after the game, talking about this being the biggest honor of his life, the biggest privilege of his life is to lead this football team. The type of camaraderie that these guys have for each other. I was just listening to an Urban Meyer speech about building his culture. And his number one thing that football is about is love. And you can't have a good football team if you don't love the guys you're out there playing with. And that's the culture that Matt LaFleur has brought to Green Bay. If you can pinpoint it to anything, it is love. Because you listen to him talk about Big Dog after the game and how and what he's meant to him personally on the field, off the field, for all the guys in that locker room. And they all feed off of each other that way. They all love each other. They all want to play for each other and go out there and not let their teammates down. You look at MVS when he has a bad play. Those guys are the first people to get behind him and to basically tell haters to F off and that he is one of them and we're going to ride or die with this guy. So that game on Saturday was just a kind of all those thoughts, all those things coming together about this team. And you saw it on the field and it was just Jacob, we were talking about exercising demons for this team. And that was another boom, check mark. Rodgers 0-2 or whatever the stat was against number 1 defenses in the playoffs. Not this year. Not this year. This year is different. I mean, it really does. It feels different. So I think that's the vibe that I really have after watching this team on Saturday is that this year just feels different.
Yeah, it does. And you start going through that game as like any other year, you're looking at it and that score definitely gets to 25-25 at some point. And you're thinking, man, this one's going to go right down to the wire and Mason Crosby's going to have to kick a field goal as time expires kind of thing. And we're just going to have to sweat one out that they really had no business sweating one out. And to their credit, something to the Packers' credit, I think all year long, if you look at a lot of their games, especially in December, when their offense has needed to do it, they have. And you look at the Chicago game, it's 21-16. Shannon Sullivan is a huge friend of Open Book. Shannon Sullivan has a huge pass breakup. And what do the Packers do? They go right down the field, score a touchdown, 28-16, just like that. You go to the Eagles game, you have the Aaron Jones touchdown run. You have the drive against Detroit to ice that game. You have several instances like that this season where the offense has just had a chance to put the game away, and to their credit, they have. And I think that's a position they could potentially be in on Sunday afternoon when they take on.
Jacob, may I interject and just drop a comment about how this three-headed monster of the Green Bay Packers running back group, they really took off this last week. I wonder if it has anything to do with making an appearance at Game On Wisconsin on the Jamal Williams show. I mean, who says no? I think the data is there. It proves the fact that those 3 guys, they probably need to be on weekly.
Well, I'm just going to throw this out there for just about any guest we have. Chris Barnes was on Lombardi's Bar this week. He almost had a pick, led the team in tackles. Shannon Sullivan had a good night on Saturday night. You mentioned the 3-headed monster. Kenny Clark was on and then got paid like 3 days later or something stupid like that. Guys, if you want something good, come on our shows. So 12, if you're listening, you want to win a Super Bowl ring? I've got a path for you, man. Tell Pat McAfee you need to take a break this week or something like that, or come on both. I don't know, something like that. I got a question, and I don't like doing off-season stuff while this season is as special as it is, but I do think it's an interesting question. Now, I will put out the obvious caveat that I do think the answer to this question is going to be the Packers will not pay either guy, but money's no object here. So I've got a question. You got to choose just one guy to pay this offseason. Who is it? Aaron Jones or Corey Linsley? And the reason I think that question is interesting, those are probably two of the most devalued positions on the offensive side of the ball. The Packers have given out 2 third contracts to offensive linemen, one of which was this season with David Bakhtiari. The other was Chad Clifton. They've never given out a third contract to a center, and they haven't given out a second contract to a running back in a really long. And that includes, they could have re-signed Eddie Lacy 1 year, $3 million, and they did not. So
James
I'm going to kick that.
Baby. How the disrespect on our boy James Starks, 4-4, got a second contract, not a big one.
Oh, that's right. He did. They gave him a short little extension. You're right. That's probably the last one they did. You're correct.
But that's what they would do. I mean, that's apples and oranges, right?
Right. Yeah, that's not the Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara contract that Aaron Jones is reportedly seeking for that. So assuming that you're going to pay these guys market value, which guy are you guys signing? Eli, I'll kick to you first.
It's really tough because I've always been in the group of to not pay running backs, but looking at Aaron Jones, it's so hard to make the argument to not pay him when he's doing the thing. Like, he just seems to just do things that other running backs on this team for sure, but across the league really can't do. And it might put them in an interesting cap situation, but I personally am pushing for them to sign him. But if I'm choosing what is more likely between the two of them, I would have to turn towards Lindsley, because centers get paid a bit less. And he just made it All-Pro. He's been absolutely incredible, extremely reliable throughout his entire career. And I think the relationship between a quarterback and a center is very important. And Lindsley isn't old. I think he still has plenty of good ball left in him. And I think they could get him on a 2 or 3 year deal at a decent value. But like you said, to lead off the question, unfortunately, it wouldn't shock me if neither of them are in Packers uniforms next year. But the one I see more likely is probably Lindsley.
Yeah, my answer is I would pay Corey Lindsley if given the choice. I'm a firm believer that football is built from the front back or the front to the sides, whatever way you want to look at it. Obviously, the quarterback matters quite a bit, but you could see this Packers team. The games they've struggled in are the games the offensive line has struggled in. Their front was dominant, and then they're going to have their chin straps buckled up and ready on Sunday afternoon. If they go to the Super Bowl, their offense is going to have to be a big reason why. And that front group, which played their worst game of the season against Tampa Bay. Obviously, some caveats to that. David Bakhtiari left the game. Rick Wagner went in and played left tackle cold. That's very different than having a full week of practice reps and everything like that. So this is going to be different. They're going to need to be ready for some stuff like that. Lindsley has been this season, obviously, as good as it gets. He's a first-team All-Pro type of player, and that is where I would go. With Aaron Jones, I understand as far as backs on this team, he's the most special one. And I completely understand that. If you're saying, I need one run to pop for 60 yards, who am I giving the ball to? It's 33. And there's not a whole lot of question or hesitation on that. However, you saw A.J. Dillon, his first stretch of extended action, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the Packers offense really was fun to watch that night because it looked a little different. Now, granted, is A.J. Dillon going to pop one for 65 yards? Well, they need to find somebody like Aaron Jones's complement. Sure. The argument that I've heard in counter is that Aaron Jones is special, and I do agree with that. However, Zeke Elliott was special when they paid him. Todd Gurley was special when the Rams paid him. David Johnson was special when the Cardinals paid him. I think that argument is one that dissipates very quickly. The other question I would like to ask, and I would love to get the input of some like salary cap types, so the Ken Ingleses of the world, is how long does somebody have to be good within that contract for that contract to be worth it? So if somebody is good, you give somebody a 5-year contract like the one Dalvin Cook just got. How long does Dalvin Cook have to be Dalvin Cook for that contract to be worth it? Because you kind of give out those contracts knowing maybe year 4 and 5 isn't going to be great. Is that worth it?
Well, that's how they structure them a lot of times when you look at how they, it's front loaded or whatever, knowing like, hey, this is really a 2-year contract. I would love to see something like that. Because I would pay Aaron Jones. I just, man, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. I really don't. But man, it seems like every stinking week I'm just like, oh, he's so good. Oh man, so I don't know. And I think center is a position that they're more equipped. First of all, they're equipped to handle both those losses really well. But I think center is a more seamless transition. with just either you let John Runyon Jr. take over or you slide in Lucas Patrick and let Runyon Jr. be the other guard. I think whoever's going to be playing center next to Elton Jenkins is going to be just fine. My theory with interior offensive line play is kind of you need one stud to kind of anchor, and then you can get by with two other guys that maybe aren't dominant, but they'll look dominant because you have one guy to help on a lot of those combo blocks and such. But yeah, man, Aaron Jones, I would love to see them give him a contract. Like it in a perfect world, they could do like, hey, here's a 2-year, $24 million contract, right? $12 million a year is what you want. We'll give it to you for 2 years. I just don't want to commit to anything beyond that because that's the crux with the running back position, right? Is like you're saying with those guys, even add Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey was supposed to be the exception to this rule because he is their offense. He catches balls. He's practically a slot receiver that can line up in the backfield. But he was hurt all year. And that's kind of the issue is these running backs, they just don't last. And Aaron Jones is a smaller guy with an injury history. I think this is 2 years in a row, at least, even though he got a little bit nicked up this year, but it's tough. I don't think it would be the greatest. I guess let me just frame it this way. If they don't do it, I'm going to understand. If they do it, if they pay him, I'll justify it. I'll somehow justify it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we all will. That's how that works, right? I mean,
I don't think anyone would really be that upset. Because on top of that, too, both those guys are culture guys, right? They're guys that second to none character. They're guys you want in your locker room. And here's a bold prediction. I think Corey Linsley's chance of being a Green Bay Packer again next year are below 1%. And I think he's going to be a Jacksonville Jaguar next year because they have all the money in the world. They're going to have a young quarterback coming in there. Oh, and by the way, they're bringing in Urban Meyer, who is an old his old coach at Ohio State. So I think if he's going to go anywhere, that fit makes a ton of sense to me. And honestly, for both those guys, I hope they get all the money. Give those guys all the money because they deserve it. It's just probably not going to be in Green Bay.
One question we had here is who say they don't dump other contracts and sign both. That's certainly possible. It kind of depends on what the cap situation looks like. Right now, what everybody's kind of going by the assumption is that the salary cap is going to be $175 million, which is about $20 million below this season's salary cap, which means the Packers are going to have some salary cap gymnastics to do this offseason anyway. So they're going to have to do that just to get to where they need to be below the cap, sign their draft picks, maybe add a guy or two in free agency kind of thing too. That part will be interesting, but it's a good question. Like I said, I think in general, you mentioned Jacksonville for Linsley. I think that's a potential spot for Aaron Jones as well.
Sign them both, man. It wouldn't be a bad idea.
No,
they got James Robinson there too. So but man, pair him with him.
And Urban Meyer likes to recycle those backs through there too. And they need a lot of guys like that. And Jones looks like the kind of back that would fit really well in Urban's offense. So that's something that could happen, but that's for the offseason. Thankfully, as of now, January 17th, 2021, the Packers are not in their offseason yet because they are playing, as the ticker on the bottom here suggests, at Lambeau Field for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And they're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And my mother's favorite quarterback, Thomas Edward Brady Jr., will be facing off against Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure if that's going to be a storyline this week or not, but I wanted to bring it up at the first in the forefront. It's the first time the two men have faced off in the postseason. They have faced off 3 other times. Once at Lambeau Field in 2014, and that was the Packers won 26-21. They faced off in 2018. That was Mike McCarthy's last season as the head coach. The Packers lost that game in Foxborough, and then they faced off this season, obviously, with the game we mentioned prior. There was another time they faced off on the same team, but Rodgers was concussed. That was the Matt Flynn damn near miracle game. It was also the last game the Packers lost before going to the Super Bowl that season. So, guys, we know the matchup. Jake, what are your first thoughts as you look at this Tampa Bay team and going up against this Packers team at Lambeau Field?
Packers by 100. That's what I think. No, I mean they're gonna have to bring their A game. They're gonna have to run the ball well again. They're gonna have to get those linebackers moving, trying to creep up a little bit in the passing game to open up some of that space off of play action. I think they need to take all of their outside run plays and shoot them to the moon this week. I think the defense, the one thing that does concern me about the defense is one, they play really good for to give credit to the defense, they played really well situational football, right? I don't think that the Rams moved the ball hardly at all when it was a one possession game. Why they just play soft zone when they're up 2 scores, I don't know. And we're not going to know. That question hasn't been asked directly to the head coach, and he just kind of sloughs it off. So the thing that concerns me is Tom Brady and being able to pick apart those soft zones. And you need to get after him. You need to put him on his back. You need to make him uncomfortable like you would with any quarterback. And I think if they can do that, I think if they can take care of the ball, they win this game. They probably win it by a score. I would say this game, it wouldn't surprise me. The Packers are going to score, I think. I think they're going to get in the 30s again. It's just going to be, can they keep Tom and his offense, out of the end zone? And the thing about Tom Brady is say what you want about him, but the man wins games. And so making sure he does not have a shot to win the game at the end of the game is going to be huge. He's the best closer that we've ever seen in the NFL. So this Packers team needs to pour it on early, and they need to make sure they slam the door when they get the opportunity. And I think they'll come out with a win.
And on that note, something you mentioned about the defense and playing well in situational football is there is no quarterback in the history of the world that has ever played situational football better than Tom Brady. And that's something that I know that, Packers fans that want to argue he's not the best ever always want to point to everything's been easy for him. What I will say is, one, I don't think that Tom is the best ever. However, there has been nobody better at just executing, and a game never feels like it's out of control as long as he's back there. And 28-3 against Atlanta is a very good example like that. And obviously there's a team effort that goes to that. New England's defense has to make stops to keep them in the game, all that good stuff. I understand that. That being said, when it comes to playing situationally, Tom Brady's as good as it gets in situational football. And if that's the route that Green Bay is going to have to take, I think you're asking for a lot out of this defense to try and stop Tom Brady in situations like that. I think the biggest concern that I have on the defensive side of the ball is one of the biggest advantages that Green Bay has is Jair Alexander. And Tampa Bay has 3 dudes that you could feasibly say Jair should be the one shadowing. If I were to pick, I would say he should probably be running with Mike Evans, but they still have Chris Godwin, and they still have human trash can Antonio Brown on their team. And those guys, say what you will about their character, the reality is those guys can play. Well, Godwin, you can't say much about his, but you know what I mean. They can play ball. And that's something that is a concern, because the other thing about Tom that he's really good at is figuring, it's kind of the same thing that Rodgers is good at. Ross Uglum always says it this way. Once he figures out you suck, he goes at you again and again and again and again. And if bad Kevin King shows up, they're going to attack him again and again and again and again and again. And I give the Packers defense some credit, because the first time these two teams faced off, it was very similar to the point you made earlier, Eli. It was the Bucs had short fields, and they were able to score off that. The Packers defense did kind of keep them in the game, and they're a better overall unit than the one that played them in Tampa, in early October, mid-October. That being said, if I had to pick my druthers, I would have preferred Drew Brees. That being said, I can't think of a way that a Super Bowl, I thought for sure in 2010, nothing could have been sweeter than the way the Packers won that Super Bowl. They beat the Eagles, which is my dad's favorite team. They beat the Falcons, which is one of my best friend's team. And that was a team that had beaten us earlier in the year. And then they beat the Bears. Eli, you know this as well as I do. We live in Bears country, so you know the deal there. And then they beat the Steelers, who are like 2 stars on their helmet away from being Dallas Cowboys fans, I think was the way I described them the other night. They're not too far off from being that way. That being said, if they beat Tom Brady and win a championship, I could feasibly pass away and be happy, I mean, what else is there, at that? I'm joking a little bit, but you guys get what I mean. I don't think there's anything sweeter, and there's any way to do that. And honestly, if you took me back at the beginning of the season and got some truth serum in me and said, the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this season, how is it going to happen? Well, they're going to have to beat Tom Brady in a playoff game for that to happen. That's just going to have to be how it is. Fate always seems to play a role in something like this too. It's why they had to go beat Chicago. It's why they had to go win in Philadelphia the last time they played, where they hadn't won in 10 million years. It's why they had to go to Atlanta, where they had lost. And it's why they had to beat the Steelers, who are like the team that says we have the most championships, which is objectively false. Last time I checked, 13 is more than 6, but maybe they struggle counting in Pittsburgh. I don't know. My first thoughts are bring it on. And that's the way that I know there's a lot of fans, and you guys are going to be in the chat and you guys are going to talk to me all week about how this isn't the matchup you wanted. And now you're scared or you're worried or whatever the word you're going to use is. This is how it's going to have to be. And I think if you're scared and you're going to say, well, they're going to lose or something like that, then don't bother watching the game. Like you already know the outcome, then don't bother, because this team is special and special teams don't get blown out in the championship game. And they've exercised every demon on their way this year so far. They didn't have enough weapons. They're the number one offense in the NFL. Couldn't stop the run. They've gotten better at that all year. They shut down Derrick Henry. Couldn't beat a good defense from the NFC West. They literally just did that. Now the demon that's left is Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers has never played well in an NFC championship game. I think I made the joke earlier today. The next game that Aaron Rodgers plays well in an NFC title game will be the first. Exercise those two demons, go win a second title, and all of those demons are gone. So that's my initial thought. Eli, I don't mean to have you follow that, but go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I think what they need to do, similar to the Rams and to most of their opponents, is get out to an early lead and force Tom Brady to drop back a bunch and bring pressure with as least many people as you can. So 4 would be great. I would like to see some blitzes. I don't want it to be too easy, but everyone knows the formula to beating Tom Brady. It's pressuring with 4. That's how the Giants beat him twice in the Super Bowl. And that's just how I think your best chance of throwing him off his game, rattling him, and not letting him get comfortable is by bringing pressure. And right now, with the way Za'Darius, Rashawn Gary's playing, Kenny Clark, Preston Smithy, I mean, everyone in that front 7 has been stepping up their game. And an underrated key part of this defense, I think, for this game specifically, will be Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage. Between Gronk, and now you even see Cameron Brate making plays over the middle, and Antonio Brown or Chris Godwin, whichever one's in the slot. There's a lot of action going on in the middle of the field for the Bucs offense right now. And considering Amos and Savage have been the best safety duo in the league over the last month and a half, makes me feel a lot more comfortable going into this game than maybe if this game was 2 months ago. But like both of you said, I think the only team that basically can beat the Packers is themselves. I mean, Saturday, the Allen Lazard drop, the Aaron Rodgers overthrow to MVS, those were kind of like the 2 plays that really almost made it a game. Otherwise, they controlled everything. And I think they have the opportunity to do that against the Bucs. You run the ball, Rodgers, and like you both said, this team really does feel special and different. I don't think in my entire life I've seen a Packers team with this much swagger, energy, excitement, both on the sidelines, offense, defense, everywhere. The one thing you can maybe look at is special teams, which continues to be a bit of a concern. You had the one big return, but other than that one return, they actually were very good in kick coverage this week. And then, of course, you had the bad snap, which led to a Mason Crosby injury. We'll learn more about that extent as the week goes on. But I said it before the Saints-Bucs. Yes, I would have preferred to play the Saints, but the way we look right now, the way Rodgers is playing, the way he's talking, I don't think anyone beats this team in Lambeau. That's for sure. What happens in the Super Bowl, we'll deal with when we get there. But I don't expect any kind of cakewalk. But I think the Packers, they should win this game. I mean, other than Tom Brady, the rest of this Bucs team does not have a lot of experience in that kind of weather. And you could say, oh, it doesn't matter because Brady's the one throwing the ball. But when you're a receiver,
yes, it does.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a receiver and you're trying to catch the ball in 20 degrees or below weather, and if there's snow coming down and that's something you're not used to, that's a total game changer. We've already seen Chris Godwin have plenty of drop issues, and those were in 2 good weather games, one of them being in a dome. And Mike Evans, I don't know the exact number, but I can't imagine he's played in a lot of games in that temperature. So it's going to be an advantage for the Packers, obviously, to play at home. And I think, again, just like any other week, unless we beat ourselves, no one's beating the Packers in Lambeau Field right now.
Another point here made by Iowa Joe. Hopefully Kingsley Kiki's back this week, because something to think about is that interior pressure. And that's where I think Kenny Clark, Kingsley Keke, Zadarius Smith, Rashawn Gary. You saw the Saints able to get some pressure on some twists and games and stuff like that. Hopefully Mike Pettin's got some things dialed up like that, because if you let Brady sit in the pocket, it doesn't matter how well you cover on the back end, he'll pick you apart. And I think that the other good news for the Packers is, as far as the running game goes, if you want to worry about the Packers' run defense, Alvin Kamara is a much worse matchup than someone like Leonard Fournette. They've done well against downhill runners and guys like Derrick Henry, for example, as opposed to your slashers, those guys' ability to cut on a dime like Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, players of that nature. So maybe the Bucs will know that and think it's a big week for Ronald Jones, but they really have ridden Leonard Fournette since his playoff run started. And frankly, Ronald Jones is a little banged up. So we'll see how that goes as well. Guys, I don't want to pick the AFC game. Just so everybody's aware, it is the Chiefs against the Bills. That being said, there's one major caveat to that game at this point, and that is that Patrick Mahomes is very likely. I don't know, Jake, maybe you can give a little more insight if it was officially diagnosed as
I'm Googling rear naked chokeholds right now because that's what Jay Glazer just came out and said is the concern is that he doesn't have a concussion. It was that he was choked. The air was cut off from his head, and that's why he got up woozy. But now people are talking about, like, they're breaking down how long his arm was around his neck, and it's like 2.3 seconds or something, and they're like, that's really fast to be choked out. And then some people are like, no, it's not. That can actually happen. So, dude, it's gonna be a long week, man.
I thought the same thing, though. I didn't see any part of his head.
Yeah, he didn't.
Round or a player that would have resulted in a concussion. I was watching it with our brothers, and I said, that looks more like a neck injury of some kind than a concussion. And I understand when he stood up and then wobbled, it felt very much like a concussion, but it really didn't look like one in the replay, in the slow-mo.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I don't want to pick that game. It'll be interesting to see how that works. I would assume Mahomes is going to play, but as long as there's any question of it, because obviously, with all due respect, the Chiefs very clearly have a great team. I think they proved that today, and they've proven that several times over. If Kansas City's not starting Patrick Mahomes, the Buffalo Bills are ticketed for the Super Bowl, I think. And they may very well be anyways. I think that the Bills can certainly give the Chiefs a game. They already have. That said, I think if Patrick Mahomes starts, I'm picking the Chiefs, but I don't want to go too far into that rabbit hole just because of the uncertainty around that. Good question here. I thought you weren't wearing pants in that photo for a minute, but yeah, it appears that you are. So thank God for that. Rashawn Gary only played 32 snaps against the Rams. Do we see that number go up against the Bucs? I think you're going to have to, just because against Brady, I think the way to beat him is going to have to be kind of the thing that's annoyed some Packers fans about the way Mike Pettin has approached the game. And that is, people are going to fly to Tampa faster than they're going to drive. And I think you're going to have your best pass rushers on the field. And Rashawn Gary can hold his own in run defense on the edge, certainly. But, taking on double teams and stuff as a defensive tackle is a little different. But I think, Jake, you tweeted the stat today. Rashawn Gary had 7 pressures, tied for the team lead. He was the highest Pro Football Focus graded player for the Packers, and that certainly matches the eyes from what happened throughout the course of that game. So I think you need to see something like that. As far as the question about Snacks Harrison, because I've seen this a lot too, is will he play more on running downs? Whoops. I like that one too. I caught that one by accident, but right. EQ has 2 touchdowns. I dig that, but let's just say I'll be surprised if that happens. But I've been surprised before. To answer the question about Snacks, I think that one of the reasons for that yesterday was the Rams, when they moved the ball on offense, was in no huddle, and they caught the Packers in some matchups, and the Packers kind of got spooked by that, I think. So they were putting guys on the field that had some value potentially as a pass rusher, and that is not Damon Harrison's game. It has never been Damon Harrison's game, and it's never going to be his game at this stage of his career. So I think that played a role in it. And the other reality is he's an old guy, and he just got there, and maybe he doesn't have a whole lot left. I don't know, but what are your guys' thoughts on that as we're running a little short on time? Eli, I'll start with you.
I look at him like Ryan Pickett. You put him in the middle, and he just stuffs the run. You let the guys around him pressure the quarterback. I think he'll play more snaps because they do have more of a downhill attack between, especially with Fournette for the Bucs. But I think what I saw that was maybe the most effective front for us was when you had Za'Darius lined up over the center. I mean, when he's getting a good jump on the ball on the snap and he's over the center, there's no center in football that can stop a momentum-full Za'Darius Smith. So I think Snacks will play more on some rundowns, but like you said, I think it needs to be Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith on the edges, Za'Darius kind of roaming around, and then you got Kenny Clark in the middle with a mixture of Dean Lowry, Snacks, Lancaster, and hopefully Kingsley Keke if he returns. That would be a big deal.
Jake?
Yeah, talking about Snacks, I think I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I don't know why he was playing in that game, especially on early downs. But the thing with him is I know that he didn't originally want to sign with Green Bay because of the weather, because he's got knee issues, and I guess those things act up in the cold. So that's my best uneducated guess. But other than that, like defensively, how they match up with the whatever team they're playing next week, the Bucs and the Brady, they got to get after him. And I think you hit the nail on the head with Rashawn Gary. He's quickly becoming their best pass rusher. He's becoming a force right in front of our eyes. And him and Za'Darius can do really, really great things together. And I think the other thing that a lot of people have kind of lost in the shuffle is how well Preston Smith has actually been playing the last 5 weeks. He has not been asked to play out on an island in coverage anymore, or not as much. Or maybe he has and just hasn't been as exposed. But if their front seven can get after Tom Brady, it's going to be a long day for him, just because I think Jair, Darnell, Amos, those guys are all studs, right? Like, they got the dudes. Like, they got the guys to compete. It's just a matter of making plays. They match up really well with their offense. And quite frankly, the Bucs defense has some matchups that they can get after the Packers too. But if the Packers are executing on full cylinders, they're the better football team and they should win.
That I agree. I think they are. And I think they've proven that throughout the course of the season. That's why they're 13-3 and the Bucs are 11-5. And that's why this game's at Lambeau Field instead of at Raymond James. Well, I don't know if they still call it Raymond James Stadium, but that's what it was called once upon a time, was Raymond James Stadium. But that's what they're calling it, whatever they're calling it at this point. We'll know in a couple weeks if Green Bay's playing there for the Super Bowl exactly what it's called. But guys, we're running short on time, so it's Sunday, and I know I'm maybe asking for a lot, but let's do predictions on just this game specifically. Packers, Bucs, 205. Who wins, and who's the most important player in this game is the reason why? Eli, I'll start with you.
Not being biased here, I think I have to go with the Packers. Like we've been saying all show, I mean, they're just a better team. And for me, it's going to come down to the turnover battle. And we don't really turn over the ball. The Bucs have done a good job of not turning over the ball either. But Brady, outdoors in the weather, I think his arm strength, I think there will be more opportunities to pick him off, whether it's a tip drill or just underthrows on a pass or pressure him. So I'm going to take the Packers. And the most important player on either side, I'm going to go with the run game, mostly Aaron Jones. I think everything starts with that. We could talk, you could talk about Aaron Rodgers and Devontae, this, that, but if we can run the ball, the other stuff doesn't work nearly as well. I think it starts and stops with the run game, and that is mostly around Aaron Jones.
Jake?
It's going to be 34-20. Aaron Rodgers is the most important player. This is the only time in his career thus far that he's had a home game at Lambeau Field in the NFC Championship game, and he's not going to let it go to waste.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Packers win. I think they win 31-23, punch their ticket to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2010, 2011, get a chance to face off against an AFC opponent, either one of which will be a really good matchup in that Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. I think the most important player, it's hard not to go with the quarterback, especially in this scenario. The storyline is going to be beaten to death that it's Rodgers against Brady, but at this point, quarterbacks are the ones, it's the most important position for a reason. And I think the Packers have the better one. And I made the joke earlier that, Tom Brady lost 3 AFC championship games to Peyton Manning. So he's used to losing to better quarterbacks in this game. So I look forward to seeing him doing that again. And I think the Packers have the better quarterback. I think they're at home. If this game were in Tampa Bay, maybe I would feel a little bit different about it, but it's not. It's at Lambeau Field. And I think the Packers have a really good opportunity in front of them. And I also think Matt LaFleur is a better coach than Bruce Arians. I don't have a very high opinion of Bruce Arians as a head coach, just kind of in general. And I think that a lot of his flaws are being masked by the fact now that he has Tom Brady as his quarterback instead of, Jameis Winston or whoever he's had in the past. I know he had a stretch with Carson Palmer for a little bit where they had some success in Arizona, but I think Green Bay wins. I think they punch their ticket to the Super Bowl. That'll be Sunday at 2:05 Central Time, and it should be one hell of a watch. I'm certainly looking forward to it. But guys, we'll be here all week, starting tomorrow night. The girls, Maggie and Perry Goldstein, will have you at happy hour. Tuesday night, we've got the Freezer podcast. Wednesday, a doubleheader. Eli and Zach will have open book, and then Lombardi's Bar. And then Saturday, we'll have Pulse of the Pack. It remains to be seen who will be with me, because rumor has it Jason Perrone is flying into Green Bay just for this game. So we're looking forward to that. And then Sunday, Alex Strofe and the boys from Lombardi's Bar will be there to break the game down at the start of the game. And then we'll have the post-game show as well. And hopefully a big celebration as the Packers have a chance to punch their ticket to the Super Bowl. Until then, however, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jacob Westendorf. You can follow Jake. He's at Jacob Morley. He'll have your game preview, and he's got some good nuggets in there every single week. So be sure to check that out over at Packer Report. And you can follow Eli over at Book of Eli _NFL. And be sure to check out that highlight video that he put together to put the game together. But until then, guys, it's time to say goodnight. We appreciate you guys stopping by this week. It's going to be a while, but we've got some time to wait. Just relax, just breathe. Everything's going to be okay. Packers, Bucs, Rodgers, Brady, LaFleur, Arians. It's going to be a hell of a show. Enjoy the end.
98 of them. Play fake here, though. Rodgers going for it all, looking to break it open. He's got it! Lazard! Gonna go!
I just said, look, I'm not some of the dudes that you covered, so I just want you to come with me and follow me everywhere, and let's get the people what they came here for.
Talk about just pure joy running out of that tunnel. It felt like 50,000 when we ran out of the tunnel. It's hard to really put into words how special that feeling is, but you can feel it. It's so palpable. You can feel the energy of the stadium. And it's just different. It's different playing in front of a crowd.
Man rush. Goff in trouble already.